Welcome to the Manetti-Schrum Museum. My name is Juliana and I'm a Visitor Services student staffer. Before we begin today's program, we should take a moment to acknowledge the land on which UC Davis sits. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of Patwin people. Today, there are 3 federally recognized Patwin tribes: Cachildihi Band of Wintoon Indians of the Calusa Indian Community, Quetzaldihi Wintoon Nation, and Diocha-Dihi Wintoon Nation. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We are honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you everyone for coming. Warm welcome on behalf of the students, faculty, and staff of the Department of Art and Art History. My name is Elaine Nguyen, and I am a second-year graduate student in the art department. I'd like to take a moment to politely remind everyone to please silence their cell phones. Today's lecture is organized by the California Studio Manetti-Schrum Artist Residencies, a visiting artist program in the Department of Art and Art History, supported by UC Davis art benefactors Jan Schrum and Maria Manetti-Schrum. I would like to thank them for their generous support of the arts and the Manetti-Schrum Museum for co-sponsoring and hosting our lecture. I would also like to thank the students, staff, and faculty who work hard in putting these programs together. I'm excited to introduce Tania Candiani. Tania is here for the entire week and has been generously hosting seminars, introducing students to the different modes of observation across different scales, from the molecular to the cosmic. Tania Candiani lives and works in Mexico City. One of the central interests of her work is the expanded idea of translation, extended to the experimental field through the use of visual, sound, textual, and symbolical languages. Many of her projects consider the universe of sound and the politics of listening as a tool capable of expanding and transforming perceptions, both human and non-human. A fundamental part of her work is related to feminist policies and practices, understanding them as communal, affective, and ritual experience. Her production usually involves interdisciplinary working groups in various fields, consolidating intersections between art, literature, music, architecture, science, and labor, with an emphasis on ancestral knowledge and techniques, technologies, and their history in the production of knowledge. She is a member of the National System of Art Creators of Mexico, a former recipient of the Guggenheim Fellowship in the Arts, the Smithsonian Institution Research Grant for Artists, Artists in Residence at the Arts at CERN program in Geneva, Switzerland. In 2015, she represented Mexico at the 56th Venice Biennale. Her work has been exhibited internationally in museums, institutions, and independent spaces, and is a part of important public and private collections. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Tania Candiani.
Thank you very much. I just need to wear this first. Right? Yes. Ready? Thank you for this introduction. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you for joining me for this talk. I want to thank the Department of Art and Art History and the California Studio for this beautiful invitation. This week has been amazing. I'm so sad that we just have one more day with the seminar, and I hope that I'll be back soon and work with you guys. Because we are in a university, I have to say something that I am not, I don't study art. I was trained myself as in literature, and all my experience in art is about doing art and having wonderful collaborations with generous people that has been shared with me, the way of learning and creating and all the knowledge. So it's another way of work, and it's another way of devoting a life into the art production. For this afternoon, I pick up a series of works, not in a chronological order, but more in terms of groups or conceptual groups, which are all related with sound. Sound, not just in musical terms, but also as a language. So, okay. Just need to set up my chronometer. When I start working with sound, I didn't know it, I think so. I was doing a series of installations in the border. I used to live in Tijuana for 15 years. And the last year I spent in that city was the time when I was doing these big installations and actions in the border. And one of them, for example, was to work with a group of a march band. In this case, were two march bands that were playing their drums in order to just use this kind of leathers or against the wall. There's no documentation of the sound in this piece, which was really loud and beautiful, full of joy, and I didn't document it. And also this piece, which is Sobre el Tiempo. This is 1,000 alarm clocks that were installed in La Salada Desert in the north of Mexico. Even though when the little clocks has the battery on, where the sound was like this, the clicking of the second, I documented with photo, just following how the shadows were growing in the reflection with the sun. Once I did this piece, there was a curator, Carla Hassel, which was based in Mexico City in those days. And she said, Tania, I think you're thinking on sound and you haven't realized yourself. I was just coming forward with this idea of the clocks. I'm a collector myself, and I have a beautiful collection of the old clocks. The mechanical clocks are not in the photo because I removed some slides for the time. But this piece was another action performance. It was done in LA with I think 500 clocks that I received $500, so they were enough for buy 500 alarm clocks that were, in this case, they were set up at 7 p.m. The alarm was set up at 7 p.m. and it was installed in a forest, a little one. And at 7 p.m., all those beep, 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 start singing, and it was so beautiful sound. I mean, it was not like an alarm in your room at 6 a.m. It was really a kind of flowing, the way the sound was flowing over there. So it makes me understand that, yes, actually I was working with sound. That was, I think, 2007. It took me 5 days to start recording the pieces. Oh, yes, they are. So I bring some of the clocks, my favorite ones, to recording studio, and I record the passing of a minute of each of the mechanical souls of these clocks, and they are tremendously different between them. Some of them are like other ones are tick, 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 tick. So all their voices, with all their voices, I made this sound composition that was playing in this sound platform installed in a hotel. And I don't know, it was a little bit joke with this idea of the alarm clock in the hotel. That was 2012, and it was a very important year for me because this curator, Carla Jasso, the ones that insisted me that I was already working with sound, she made an invitation to me to make a solo exhibition in a museum in Mexico City, which is called Laboratorio de Arte Alameda. Laboratorio de Arte Alameda used to be a church. It's impressive, monumental place with a very particular story, one of including the Inquisition as was around there, and they were having their quarters over there. So in those days, I was doing a lot of research on old ancient technologies. And I found in Athanasius Kircher, which is this German polymath that was, I mean, he had so much knowledge about everything, mostly. But he had this book, a treaty about sound, exclusively about sound. And he had a lot of trumpets involved, a lot of beautiful engravings about trumpets as conductors, like just pieces of trumpets, huge trumpets in the middle of the architecture. So he was a big inspiration for my following search, which was creating a series of pieces precisely for the Laboratorio de Alameda. This piece is an embroidery machine, and it's connected with another research about ways of reproducing or reproducing language or recording language. There's a beautiful story about language that is an embroidery language exclusively for women, which is called Nisu. It's a Japanese tradition. And it's a code that is embroidered, and the women embroider that and pass it. This idea of having a coded embroidery was the one that started this piece. In this case, because this used to be a church, a former church, the models that you're able to see in the photo were a confessional models. So the audience was invited to enter the confessional models and whisper their secrets. And the embroidery machine embroidered them in fabric, but in a code of the tag of a graffiti. So in that way, they were discovered, but not in full. The tag was there because as I lived in Tijuana, I had an amazing collection of photography and videos related with tags, because they are a very interesting way of language. And I have a bunch of projects related with tags, but in this case, tags, language, and sound and technology were put together. In the same exhibition, which title is 5 Variations on Phonic Circumstances and a Pause, I made an organ in the choir. So normally in the churches, in the choir, there's always an organ where it's played, and there's also a choir that sings. There was no more organ over there because now it's a museum. But so my idea was to return the organ to the former church. But this organ was not a musical instrument with notes, but with words. So we created a program that has encoded all the sounds that are necessary for pronounce a language. First, it was programmed in Spanish, and then it was programmed in English, and then we programmed it in Russian because, surprisingly, the exhibition was invited to travel around Russia, and the last venue was Siberia. So the organ had two keyboards. One of them, I don't know if it's visible. Yes, it's visible there. One of them was like a organ or piano keyboard. So if you were trained as a musician, you will find a series of scores with fragments of science fiction novels that were translated into the code for the organ. So you were able to play in the keyboard and the organ will pronounce the text.
Sueño que soy un robot, sueño que soy director general, sueño que soy un volcán, sueño que soy humano compatible, sueño que soy un adolescente afgano. A veces sueño que soy poeta, sueño que soy un turista de lujo, sueño que soy libre, sueño que soy mujer, sueño que soy una pieza en un tablero de ajedrez, sueño que soy solo un sueño.
Another piece of that exhibition was pianolas, piano players, and also has the trumpets, but also it has the use of the paper rolls from the piano players, which are regularly in the piano players, we just are able to see a little fragment of this beautiful paper, which has these big lines and holes, which are the notes. And that code in a paper and that beauty of that paper it's almost invisible, and more in these days that we don't use that kind of technology. So I created these big bitrins where the paper was in a kind of a banda sinfín, like in a loop, with light in the back and a device that was reading the light that goes through the little holes and lines, all the perforations, let's say. And that was generating the tones. And in the same way, I was attracted by the piano player paper. This machine, which is the Jacquard loom, is one of my favorite machines from all times. It's a very sophisticated system for embroidery and for computing, for providing instructions. So the little cardboard cards has holes. That's why they call it punched cards, and each of the cards are an instruction for the machine that moves the needles, and each card it's a line of a thread. I was lucky to be invited to, actually 2 times to the Cuenca Biennal, but this one the first time, Cuenca Biennal in Ecuador. And in Ecuador, there's a beautiful factory of embroidery, and most of the machines are electronic already, but they kept with a lot of care a big area where they have 8 Jacquard looms, which are these impressive, sophisticated machines, and they pay 10 people to take care of them and have them working in perfectly shape. Also, they have an archive of these perforated cards, and they allow me to learn how to perforate a card. And I did this piece, which was about how to talk about technologies has been displaced, or all the time we believe that technology is obsolete. And I don't believe in obsolescence. I believe that we need to find a new life for all this amazing technology. And in the case of the embroidery, and in the case of the embroidery in Ecuador, it also has a connection with the hand looms and with the handmade tradition of embroidery. So this piece, in a way, talks about hand embroidery, hand looms that were moved away for the mechanical machines that then were moved away for the electronical ones. So I made an installation and I invented this machine that is a bit inspired a little bit the shape of the loom, using the perforated cards. And the perforated cards that I did were, I used those cards for the original jacquard loom to embroider these little labels which said hecho a mano, handmade. And also that chain of cards was placed in the machine in this instrument, and we could play it. What is beautiful about this kind of translations, like how it's gonna be the sound of this perforated card, is that we don't know until we play it and hear it. I mean, we cannot arrange the way it will sound. It's just completely a surprise. And that wonder is amazing. And it's connected with my passion with old technologies, probably. The same line of using looms and creating musical instruments with looms. I made this, this is the first loom musical instrument that I made. And I turned it into a kind of sanfona. It's, I think in English is hurdy-gurdy. I don't know how to pronounce it, hurdy-gurdy, which is a weird word, actually. Very musical, but I don't know, in the good way. But it has the pedals and the tension and the strings. My first idea was actually to, instead of having the threads of the warping, just remove the threads and instead strings. It was completely different. Once I started working with a luthier, he said, like, we cannot do that, that will not sound, so let's just do this and that. That's something that I love about working in collaboration with a lot of different people with different knowledges, because let's say that I have this idea, no? This one, I want to make this instrument. Then I bring the idea, I put the idea on the table, maybe some drawings, and then with all the knowledge, they start discussing what's possible and what's not. It's very usual that we'll ask more, like, I know that this is not very usual, but let's make it a little bit, let's push a little bit in other places which are not the comfort zone for the luthier, for example. This is another, and the second loom that I did, I transformed into a string musical instrument. This was made for the Kochi Biennal in India. And I particularly love this one because the collaboration between the luthiers was one from Mexico traveled to India, and the Indian luthier, they were sharing knowledge and they were together working in this instrument that has as well two sides for being played. So one side has the sound of Occidental guitar, and the other side it has the bridge of the instrument as a sitar. So the sounds are different, the tuning as well, but it can be played by two people in both sides, and that is where beautiful magic happens as well in the playing of the instrument. I will keep going. This piece, it's another kind of technology, and the sound is not visible, and precisely that's the most interesting part. This is a graphic of how the Kogi indigenous people from the Sierra Nevada in Colombia believe that there is the cosmos, the organization of their cosmogony is in this kind of a pyramid that goes up and goes above. It's symmetrical, and they believe that the Sierra Nevada, which is a mountain, is exactly this. It's a kind of magical thinking, and also it has the power of cure us humans of all the bad things that we're doing to our planet. So I was lucky to get in touch with them, and they agreed to help me out to build this sculpture that has the same 5 wings than in the drawings of their cosmology, the construction of the cone. And the platform that you can see in the photo has a program that is built on the architecture of the 5 cones. So when you are in the top of this platform, you can find and feel with your body, because it doesn't have sound. It's just like it's a soft sound. It's so low frequencies that you are just able to feel it in your body. But you can feel the frequency in your, ¿cómo se dice aquí? In your ankle, and then in your legs, and then in your hips, and then in your chest, and at the end in your eyes. And in a way, you are feeling this kind of the position of the cone inverted in your own body. This person was also very important, because thanks to him and to the group of people that he surrounds him, is that I start getting in touch with ancient knowledge and technologies that are not Occidental technologies. The Sound of Labor it's another of the chapters, a very important one, and also started in Tijuana when I visited the artisan that sold me my first loom for making the piece that we just saw. This is Mr. Fernando, and he's a weaver. And the day I visited, he told me that he loves sound as well. And there was some of the things that he needed to do for his work, he likes to do it with the light turned off. For example, the warping, because in that way he will hear when a thread breaks. That part of anecdote, I mean, that what he told me was like, it completely changed my way of perceiving sound. I mean, since then I've just start hearing everything, every sound that manual works makes. And we are not putting a lot of attention in the manual work and all the sound and the rhythm that comes with the manual and the repetition. So Mr. Fernando, let me record him. But what he actually did on me was like he transformed my way of listening. And there's many projects that are involved with the sound of labor and the choreography of labor. Many performances that has to do with elements like this one, which is the metate, which is a stone grinder from the pre-colonial times, and a group of performers grinding color, grana cochinilla, for a performance, and the sound of the stone over stone, like. And that was part of an exhibition which was called Chromatica, which involves a lot of videos because of the sound of the labor. But also I installed there for first time a real loom where a weaver was using all the time. So the weaver was there until we finished the tapestry. But if you enter the museum, you was able to hear the ta-pa from the distance. And it's just like bringing life into the museum, bringing the life of work into the museum. I work as well with other kind of labor, but a lot with sewing and making. And this was in Museo del Chopo for the creation of this big balloon. And the story of this piece is long, so I will not tell the story, but I will just play a little bit of the sound. These two women are professional balloon makers. This is a sound of labor, el sonido de la labor en Cuba from the Biennal de La Habana. And she's Adriana. And Adriana wants to preserve the tradition of the bordado de bolillo. I don't know how to translate that, but it's a way of embroidery with these sticks, wood sticks. But because there were no such things in Havana, she found out to embroider it with pencils. So I commissioned her to create this big embroider with pencils, and the sound of the pencils is amazing as well. This other piece, this is the beginning of 4 industries from a project I did in Cincinnati in 2020. Under the name Sounding Labor Silent Body. When I start working in projects for site-specific, which I do a lot because it's a way I enjoy very much to learn about places for first time, I visited Cincinnati and I was trying to understand what was the relation with they were very proud of the past of industry in Cincinnati. There was a time when Cincinnati and Chicago were fighting to become the industrial city in the United States, and actually Cincinnati was the venue for the industrial fair, the World Industrial Fair, for several years. And those the material in the archive for the fairs was amazing. So I was just looking in those things when I found as well the original photographs that were taken in the factories for mural male artists that created these representations of the industry in the city. And I will not mention his name because what he does was erasing the representation of women in factories. So all his murals are male workers, and that completely switched my way of approaching to the project. I decided that I wanted to work in a way to showing or enlightening the importance of women workers, not just in Cincinnati, but all over. So one of the pieces of that exhibition consisted in a video work that I record with a choir of women, and they were doing with their voices the sound of 4 industries which machinery has changed because it's obsolete. So for example, printing. Now the printing industry is electronic, so the sound of the the mechanical machines, it almost disappears. And I will play. So this is the way the pieces are installed in a 3. This one is a 3-channel projection with a quadraphonic sound. I mentioned the sound because it's about sound. It's about being involved with these voices. And it was so interesting to work with a voice that can create the sound of something that is not normal sing into a voice, which is the sound of a machine. This is a teaser, so it's just fragments of the 4 industries. This is the printing. that's a meat packing. So that's not a machine. That's the pigs. Okay. I really enjoy when I'm able to make a piece that speaks about their own materiality. Like for example, the one with the perforated cars talking about the handmade and etc. But in this case, this is El Sonido del Fuego, the sound of fire, and the trumpets were blown in a factory. And you know that when the kiln has different colors, the sound of the fire changes. So if it's a red color, the sound of the kiln has a different tone. So this piece has a choir of voices, the voices of fire. So the trumpet sings their own burn and burn. Unfortunately, the video is not so good. Okay. There's another big group of works that are the starting point of them is my relation with rivers and landscape. The city where I come from used to be a lagoon. Mexico City used to be a lake, not a lagoon, a lake with channels and rivers. And then the first act of colonialism was Hernan Cortés wanting to drain the channels so he can bring the horses in. We used to have 22 rivers in the city, and this piece is an homage of those rivers that were piped, drained, dried. This is the list of the 22 rivers, and this is the line that the rivers used to trace on the territory. You know that when the rivers flow freely, they have a shape. Once they are piped, we correct the trajectory, and that line, it's lost forever. So I worked a lot with that kind of idea of recovering, saving these traces of the rivers. And unfortunately, we couldn't find a video for this piece, but I just want to explain how it works, the process of translation, which is, if this is the line that Rio Miscuac used to trace in the territory, then I printed out in a cylinder of metal or plastic. I think we made it on plastic, sadly. But we didn't know how I didn't know how they will sound until you play it. So you have to print it in the cylinder, create the box, and then it will sound. And they were in these little boxes, and on that level, so people needed to lay down on them and make them work and hear the sound. It's not the sound of the river, but it's an interpretation of the shape of the river. This is the second time that I went to Cuenca in Ecuador, where they have 4 amazing rivers and they take care of them, which is beautiful. So this is Arpas de Rio, river harps. And each embroidery has the shape, the draw, how do you say that, the line that the river traces in the territory. And the sound boxes as well has the same trajectory, where the strings of the instrument go through. And this is played constantly with a feather that touches the strings and make the river sing all the time. And we don't have video for that. This piece is super recent. I just opened this exhibition 10 days ago in Medellin. So this is my newest baby. And it's another big instrument following the shape of Medellin River, at least the part of the river that passes in the middle of the city. The city of Medellin is embraced by this series of cerros. They call it like a little mountains. They call it cerros tutoriales. And are like arms. I mean, I remember the first time I visited the city, I had this sensation of being embraced by the arms of the mountain. And in the middle there's the river, but you cannot walk to the river because there's the freeway in both sides. So it's in the middle of the city, but it's at the same time you cannot get it, you cannot see it, you cannot get closer. So I did this new 4 bodies of this harp that has the shape and also the I don't know how to say that, but if the river starts in this high and then it goes down, so that was determinant for the size, the length of the strings. And we don't have videos yet because the activation haven't passed yet with a musician, but he's a trained musician tuning the harp for next week. This piece is important for me because of the story which is behind. The name of the piece is Nombrar el agua, naming the water. And it comes from a story that I heard when I visited a community that lives in the border between Veracruz and Puebla in Mexico, in a beautiful area, very arid, with a lot of cactuses and that. And this community has this tradition of once a year, they spend the night, the whole night, everyone, the elder and the youngest, naming everything that exists. So the following day is still exist, which is a beautiful connection with this idea of pronouncing as a magical wisdom, as a magical magic, no? The video, it's an image of a fountain that goes up and then it disappears very suddenly, like, and every time we hear that sound, we also hear the sound of different ways of pronouncing bodies of water in different languages from Mexico that are close to disappear as well as waters. So it consists in the video and then these sculptures, which are the sound waves of those voices pronouncing the words, and also embroiders that have each of the words about water, and they are embroidered white over white as they are fading. This is another river, another kind of river, a hanging river that I made for the Sydney Biennal in 2022, I think so, or when. And it consists in this idea of how the migrant birds are able to travel all over without restrictions. It's obviously connected with migration and with the idea of a free migration and the free possibility to move from here to there. And in the case of the water birds, they move from one body of water to other ones. It resembles a bit part of the system of water in this part of Australia, which is where Sydney is situated, and it has ocarinas, which is this clay instrument from the pre-Hispanic times that were remade, and there you have some of them have the shape of birds, but also has speakers and technology that pumps air into the ocarinas, flutes, and people is able to walk around and hear how the sounds travel from one place to another. I reinstalled this piece in Miami last year in December. So we changed a bit the piece, and I bring the sound archive from the water birds from the region of the Everglades. So it was very beautiful to discover that the piece can travel and also sings with the sound of the birds, of the local birds. This is also the exhibition in Medellin. Is a recently made piece elaborated in Medellin by artisans over there. And it has the shape of this kind of big flowers that inside the, no? Yes. So there are actually like campanas de escucha, listening bells, and we call the piece Prologue. It's an invitation to listen carefully to the landscape. This piece is another challenge for a luthier that I work with. I wanted to make a huge harp, and this is a permanent installation in Ensenada, in el Valle de Guadalupe. I don't know if you've ever been there drinking delicious wine. Well, this is in Villa del Valle winery. And it was installed, I think, 5 years ago, and still sounds amazing. It has strings, 24 meters long strings, and these found boats that help me to use them as an anchor for the strings that needs to be super, super tight. It's a lot of tension over there. And the resonant box is made with metal and just a piece of wood that we found. It's I will play a bit of this because the sound is so amazing and weird. This is a physical sound. It's the sound waves making vibrate one of these strings, and once one string starts vibrating, it's sympathetic with the other one that start vibrating as well, and it's a physical phenomenon. And this is how it sounds. Okay. This piece is another recent work that I made in Bogota. It's another kind of landscape. It's a landscape of sadness and sorrow. This floor was made by the artist Doris Salcedo. She negotiated with the actors of the war in Colombia to let them use the guns and melt the guns and create this floor. The floor, the plates of metal were also used by a group of women that suffered sexual harassment and violence during the war, and they inflict all the little crashes and cracks that the surface of the metal has. So this piece, what it does is translate the sound, translate all those little fissures into sound, reading the floor as a territory that used to be on war. Amplifies the shrinks and the mountains and valleys of this territory, and with an artificial intelligence algorithm, all the time is rereading the territory and play it like this. the device has the shape of a desminador, like a mine cleaner. I don't know the name for that in English, but it's an artifact for see where the mines is and remove them. And in a way is cleaning this territory as well with this kind of ritual. And talking about ritual, this is the, I'm gonna go, I have 10 more minutes, so I'm gonna go very quickly through these pieces, which involves the sound of the voice in other ways, but I'm going directly to this one, which is a way of calling with the voice to the boats. This piece was made in Poland, in a place which is called Novi Port, but it's not where the new port is. It's actually the place where the old port used to be. And the neighborhood, it was completely abandoned, and the ships stopped passing in front of the port. But that day we were doing this calling to the boats, and the boat came. So this was totally a serendipity moment that we were able to capture in the video. And talking about performances, this performance is, I love it very much. It was a collaboration with 220 women that play these drums in the subway of Mexico City. They were 2020 because there's the amount of stations that the subway system has. They started in the beginning of each line. There's 13 lines. They beginning in groups. Let's say the pink line has 12 stations, so 12 here, blah, blah, blah. And they all get together. They navigate the stomach of the city to arrive to the deepest station, and then emerge playing all together. It used to be a city with rivers, with subterranean rivers, and in a way, the subways now are the modernity rivers, and the fluidity of these women were like cleaning the underwater and the subterranean world. And I'm just gonna play a fragment of Pulso. Pulso now is on view in Perez Art Museum, and I think it's gonna be till December. So if you have chance to visit, please go. And this is the last part of the presentation, which is the projects that are related with finding a common language between other species and ourselves, humans. The point of departure of this research was the project for the animals that I worked with Julio Morales in Arizona State University Museum and some faculties of the university, of course. Where the plan, I mean, what I was looking for was how sound can be used for connecting us with the understanding of other beings, minerals, animals, or plants. And in the case of this piece, this video installation, it is I developed with Interspecific, which is a collective that I work with, a device that lived in several places outdoors and was able to recognize some species, local species, and sing for them or play for them lullabies that were composed in the sound frequencies that are pleasant for those specific species. And it was an amazing process of research and understanding ways of communicating. And the source of the sounds, it was data that we collected from a geological formation. So it was a way of weaving this deep time of the rock with the time of the animals, the local animals that has their migration interrupted because of the wall that was built by, will not mention him. So I'm going to play just a fragment of this.
A concert hall.
No?
Everywhere. A unique orchestra performs an unmatched symphony. Each species sound entering into the score. A highly evolved, naturally wrought, a masterpiece. Then we arrived, we humans, with limited language skills to express what we feel. Then we borrow some lenguaje to convey emotion, modern humans trying to convince the other creatures that they are all just an extension of one sonorant family.
Also, the footage of the animals was recorded by this device that has as well 3 night cameras, and it was a beautiful, it was not beautiful, it was a fake rock, but it turns out that all the information was beautiful. And this is part of the same project for the animals when I installed it in MPAC in New York State, no, in Troy, but I think it was last year, and they presented in this fabulous way with this smoke, and it seems like there's light coming out from the mountain, and it was just crazy. That's why I choose that photo, I think so. And this is an instrument that hits the rocks, and with that sound of the hitting of the rocks, I was able to make a concert, and that's me playing in the hall. This is another work which is called Tidal Choreography, and it's a video piece that find connections between the entities that lives in this area, which is intertidal zones, where there are water and there's no water, and it comes and go, and how we humans are affected by the waters and the gravity, as well as the tides are affected by the gravity. This gravity, it's something that I've been thinking of since the moment where I had the chance, an amazing experience of make the zero flight, the free fall flight, or the zero gravity flight with the cosmonauts in Russia. So I had this understanding of gravity of a lucky person that finally felt the non-gravity in her body. But returning to this, I mean, this piece brings me to my final piece, the one that I want to close this conference. And it's not because it's the last one, but it's because it's the one that I believe that it intertwines with many things that are been happening in my practice, which is language and the fact that how we can have a dialogue between technologies, ancient technologies, knowledge from the ancestors, and Occidental technologies and scientific knowledge. There's the questions are the same, and the not knowings are the same. We just have a different sensibility. But then once you discuss with scientists, you understand that they also has this kind of sensibility, a lot about beauty, about poetics, and about wonder. The humans invented technology because we wondering things, and we are still in the same process. So I think that this curiosity that I have in terms of keep looking for things that mesmerize me are the ones that trigger all these projects. And Preludio Cuántico is a piece that I recorded in a beautiful place in Mexico City, which is a sculpture that was built in 1969 in the area of the National University in the south of Mexico City. It was built by 6 sculptors and is in an area with a very interesting and different ecosystem, because it's a volcanic stone, and all what it grows over there is related with that kind of soil. This sculpture has 64 of these structures, so I work with 64 musicians in a sound composition that it relates with the beginning of our world. I mean, the chapter 1 is about the Big Bang, and it passes through the comprehension of our bodies as energy, and how the musical instrument as well are, in a way, pure energy as well. I made this project because of my visit to CERN, to the big collisioner of atoms, yes, ¿cómo se dice? El colisionador de hadrons collisions. And I had the chance to have discussions with theoretic physicists, but also here, El Mamos en China, the person that helped me to create the Cónica sculpture, was part of the conversations as well. And I'm just gonna finish with a fragment of this. It's so sad that we don't have sound because we need it. I want to say that all the videos are in my website. You can consult the website, and they are free. There are no password. I recommend headphones. And thank you very much. I made it in 58 minutes. I'm happy for that. Okay, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you so much for that lecture. We're going to open the floor for questions.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi.
My name is Gabriel. In one of my classes, right now we're talking about how certain ancient objects, when they present themselves to people, it's because the object wants them to take care of them, and it specifically is for them. So my question is, throughout your art and throughout this knowledge, have you ever seen a moment where the earth has either gone silent or spoke up in the presence of extending its knowledge to humans?
Oh my God. A ver. Explain me a little bit more, if yeah, please.
I guess I'm just wondering if there's ever been a moment where, okay, so let me backtrack a little bit. In one conversation I was having with someone, I found out that there's some really old cactus by the southern border that has been around for many, many, many years. And when there's people who are trying to cross over, they emit a sound and they essentially speak up. And the US has used that in a detrimental way to capture people who are undocumented. And so my question is, have you ever seen a moment where the earth has purposely gone silent because it's aware? And I ask that question because I think a lot of the times what we're taught, especially what I've been taught here in the US, is that the earth doesn't know better and that humans know better, and that everything is always, we always have access to it and it's always ready for us. But I just want to know if you had an experience where the earth has been aware of what is good intention or bad intention and has found a way to know when to preserve its knowledge.
I think it's something that is happening all the time, and I hope it keeps happening more and more. Actually, this search that I am now, it's in understanding ways of pushing towards that. I mean, to put more attention in what Earth has to tell us. There's that's where the ancient knowledge has all the rights to teach us again. I mean, we need to kind of undone what we think that we know in terms of learning again the good way things has to happen. I mean, we are putting a lot of attention on things that make us not listen. That's why listening is so important. We need to listen what is there. So yeah, it's not a question, it's a beautiful thinking what you said. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that question so much, and I wanted to add something to that question and then ask another question. But I wanted to say that that's really interesting that the sounds that are captured in your work are sounds that we are meant to hear because they are sounds that are audible to humans. But there are some sounds that the earth emits that are not audible for humans, and they're not meant for humans to be heard, and that humans capture and then translate in range so that to hear things that we're not supposed to hear and to use them. And so what responsibility do we have in that? That's really beautiful thought, Gabriel. But I also wanted to ask you about the labor, the sounds of the labor, because, well, I spent all my time in a welding shop, and usually I'm not by myself, but with the team working together. And so part of the sounds of the shop are definitely the conversations that are happening. And I wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about why did you make the decision to ask the humans to make the sounds of the machines and remove the conversations that humans have? Because there's this really interesting way in which people form community when working together. And I wanted to ask you if you had any piece where you had the conversation of humans working as part of the piece.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Thank you, Beatriz. Yeah, I mean, in one side, I'm super. Ay, ¿está apagado? Hola, hola. Here. Okay. Yeah, I'm very interested in exploring different ways of using the human voice. Since the research on the organ, on how we have been trying to
reproduce the human voice or creating machines that imitate the human voice, etc. But then how the human voice can imitate other sounds and what's the range of possibilities. So that's why I decided to do that. And also because I wanted to work with the choir. And I want to work with a choir that not sings songs, but sings something else, because I like to create these situations where people is not doing what they usually do. So that was for the Sound of Labor. But I've been using, I have several pieces which are part of this series, Sonidos de la Labor. And one of them was recorded in Cuba. Besides Adriana, the woman with the embroidery, there was also another one that was recorded in a place where there was a lot of women sewing clothing. We instrumented re-staging something that was a tradition for the tobacco rollers, which is the reader. It existed a reader for male workers, and the reader reads to them the prensa and other political essays to train them while they were working. But that was just happening to men. And what we did was a place of women reading a series of selection of text, many feminist texts. But then that created a conversation, and it was very beautiful, and that was recorded. Like after the readings, there were discussions, and they keep working while they were having these conversations. But also we were reading, because the selection of what the selection was made by them. So we also have poetry and narrative. And the Cuban poetry is super, how can I say, sexual oriented, many of the ones that they choose at least. So they were having fun with that. So yes, yeah, we do that. But it's true, there's a lot of conversation while working. And also, for example, the instructions are part of it. Loud instructions. So in India, I recorded loud instructions for male constructors and also women constructors and, ¿cómo se dice? Barredoras. Sweepers, yeah.
We have time for maybe 2 more questions.
Thank you very much. This is a very impressive, over my head in many ways, but it was very enjoyable.
Thank you.
So many of these pieces that are installations, like the one in the Valle in
Guadalupe,
so those are permanent installations. They are not activated. How are they activated? How does that sound continue? Are these wind driven? Are they installed? Does somebody come over and bang them and get them started? Was it a one-time event, or is it something that in this winery people can actually continue to hear these sounds?
Yeah, well, that one is wind activated, and it's the position of the piece. It receives all the Santana winds and certain winds that are very heavy, and there's probably periods of the year when it's silent because there's no wind. But if people walk around, they can just play with it, and the sound is also super interesting. You can just use like un trapito or a little plastic, and and it's weird. But there's I know because of Instagram, so people tag the piece and it still sings, yes. And that is an old technology. I found the first ARP you can find those in ancient engravings. Actually, in this book of Athanasius Kircher, which is called Musica Universalis, he has a wind harp over there. So it's basically the same technique, which is you have to tie the string super, super heavy and have a sound box. And it works, no? Because it's about the physics of one string resonated and make the other one to resonate as well.
Are most of these installation pieces permanent then?
That one is permanent.
I know, that's the only one you mentioned that was still there. And I was curious, then all these museums and all these
No,
All these weavings and all these wonderful contraptions you build, they are for a limited time, and then they're dismantled and put away, or are they part of a collection?
Yeah, some of them are part of collections. Some others are permanent. I just show the art as permanent one, but I have a few sound pieces as in permanent display, or in museums, or in particular collections with public access. And some others I just need to disassemble. For example, the water birds, which is the one that I made in Sydney with the little birds. That one, it's a kind of you have to detach the whole thing, and it's just palitos. It's just sticks with numbers, and you have to put it together in a couple of weeks. I mean, it's labor involved over there, but yeah, it lives in 2 boxes in my studio in the storage. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Thank you so much for the wonderful talk. Most of the things went over my head, but my question was that how related is your practice to your background in literature? Because I see a lot of research and you seem to have like an encyclopedic knowledge from which some of these things start. So I'm just curious to hear from you.
Yeah, at first I thought that language and literature was the line that crossed all my work, because it has a lot of variety. Right now I made this selection with projects related with sound, but there's some others that are related with dance, and there's some others related with embroidery and textiles. So it goes everywhere, and I think it's language and not precisely literature. Or yes, you know what? Storytelling. I like to tell stories. I like to consider myself like a storyteller, and in all the projects that I work with, each of them has start with research where I found things that just completely make me be in love of that, what I found, of that founding, and I want to share that with the audience. And that's why, yeah, I believe that when people visited my exhibitions, I want to tell that stories, and I ask them to listen to the stories and see it and read, and they can find a lot of information to shape their own and particular appreciation with the work. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your beautiful talk. Yes, always so affected by sound when you work with materials, and definitely this is very interesting. I'm very impressed by how huge some projects are and how many people involved. And for example, 220, 64, and like it's huge, a lot of patterns, multitudes, repetitions, are like a huge machine from bodies. So what's your relationship to this? Like almost faceless, but creating other, yeah?
Yeah, well, they're not faceless. They always are credited, and they are totally, I mean, I always speak in plural because I work with others. So projects are made depending the project with several people. For example, I mentioned 64 musicians, but actually that production was about 150 people if you include the cameras and the catering. Everyone is listed in the credits, and I feel very, very grateful to have a chance to work with in this way. I don't know, I mean, I cannot imagine my work alone. I mean, it's probably useless, or yeah, I think the soul, and I mentioned that with the ones that are in the seminar, that this idea of creating an atlas. The atlas is made by several observers in different points because they bring their own perspective, and if you put all that perspective together, then you create a wider image of what the sky could be, the atlas of the sky, no? So that's how I believe my projects. I wish that my projects works like that, like an atlas, no?
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the beautiful talk. I was wondering if you could communicate to us something about a sound that you have encountered through your work that blew you away.
A sound that I haven't had encountered.
That your work brought to you, that your life has brought to you, that really moved you.
Well, I'm thinking right now in a video that I eliminated from the presentation. That was the Requiem. It's a Requiem. What's the name? Requiem for. I don't remember the whole title, but I made this project after COVID. It was during COVID actually, and it was with a choir in New York, and me and Rogelio Sosa, this is a project of the both of us, we asked them to write down with words, describe the sounds they were living with during the lockdown. So they send us their texts about those sounds, and we translate that into actual sound to create a sound score. A sound score is an MP3 pista or a WAV, a track that has that sound, and they were able to hear all their written impulses into that track. But then with that score, they all together sing, repeating or mimicking those sounds. And that was tremendously moving because they were doing with their voices the sound of sirens and the sound of oxygen pumps and the sound of kids, the sound of birds. So yeah, but actually I'm just saying that one, but then I'm like, oh no, it's gonna be the other one. So it's very difficult. It's like pick your favorite song. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult.
Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Tania, for
Thank you very much. Thank you.